Yeah, my name's Olivia Bioni, and I teach at Club Pilates, but I also have my own little LLC adventure called Olivia Bioni Wellness, where I teach private classes. And I also run two Pilates podcasts, Pilates Teacher's Manual and Pilates Students Manual. And
Hmm.
that's what I do.
And your plans have an Instagram page.
They do have an Instagram page, but I'm not as it's like I spend more time watering them than I do spend posting about them. But I do have a lot of plants. That's definitely something that happened just because when I moved into this apartment, I've got these like really beautiful north-facing windows, and I can like see all of downtown because I live in Hyde Park. And I was like, you know what, our apartment needs lots and lots of green things. So
There you
that's what
go.
I have. Bookcases of plants now. This is where I am.
That's so funny. Andrew, my colleague who runs a studio, also like the front looks like a greenhouse, and
Yes.
it has his LEDs out there and stuff, and it almost looks
Mm-hmm.
like a grow
Grow
up if you're
lights.
careful, right? Like you just gotta
Yeah.
make sure that, yeah. But no, it's fun, and I like talking about what are our other passions besides Pilates, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
see my stuff. I have my classic car, and every now and then I'm throwing posts up about that. And it's like there's someone that connects with and that resonates with. So let's give that some airtime, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the Pilates piece is important, but it's easy when it's your job and when it's your business that you can just like when your fun thing is also your work thing, then you don't have like a decompression time.
Right.
So for me, I know that I usually, if I'm teaching in the studio, I teach evenings and I'm not getting home till like 9 o'clock at night. And it's like a really important thing for me to kind of like decompress after, 4 or 5 hours of teaching to, go check on my plants, stick my finger in some dirt and like be amazed by new growth and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also about people who have a passion for Pilates, but they're in some other field. I don't know if that was the case for you, but like a lot of times people feel like I'm afraid to jump into Pilates as a profession because I'm going to lose my passion and my enthusiasm for it when I have to make money off of it.
Yeah, I definitely, I started as a yoga teacher. And so I had been teaching yoga for about 7 years when I jumped on the Pilates train.
Mhm.
And especially like those two communities, sometimes people are like, well, you can only like one or you can only do one. And if like you're betraying your, yoga love if you do something else. And I really see that the passions that we have is like complementing each other because we're more than one person, like you
Yes.
are a Pilates teacher, you're a dad,
Mhm.
you're a business owner, you're a friend and a family member, and like all of these things. Like we already have lots of things that we're doing. It shouldn't be strange that you enjoy doing more than one thing as well.
Right. But is it a betrayal because you can't devote your life to yoga anymore? Like you have a split attention?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what you think the core tenet of yoga is, I would
Right.
say, because there are like some styles, and even the style that I practice is Ashtanga yoga. And that's like, if you're going to do that, that is 6 days a week at 4 o'clock in the morning, hour and a half practice,
Hmm.
like, and that when I found it really connected with me, that structure and that like that discipline, the same way that like classical Pilates can really connect with people, that it's
Yes.
like classical Pilates, it's the same poses in the same order. You hold them for the same breaths, and the next thing is the next thing, and you just go,
Hmm.
go, go. And there's a lot of beauty in that. But I think that in order for me to appreciate that more, you have to like have other things as well. Like I can really respect people who follow that very disciplined approach to it. But I can also, do my yoga 3 times a week and I don't consider myself like betraying it. And I can teach Pilates 20 times a week and that doesn't make me any less passionate or anything. The same way you can love, like if you, your family members, you don't like get less love. It's not a zero sum game. You can
Right. Yes.
expansively love things, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I guess it's true. I mean, it lends to the bigger question of who are you? Like what
Mm.
do you identify with, right? And how you want to, I'm a yogi, I'm a Pilates instructor, I'm a fill in the blank,
Yeah.
right? So,
I've talked to friends about this, and one of my good friends, Kevin, said it's actually better to define yourself by what you're doing instead of who you are. Because if you say something like, I'm a Pilates teacher, then you like put yourself in a box. But if you say, I teach Pilates, you're like, oh, well, that's just a thing.
Hmm.
In addition to someone who cares for plants and does
Yes.
yoga and everything. And so you can be an active agent in your life.
Absolutely. And I've had to go through that playing sports, and I've had athletes on here too where, you're in the NBA, you want to say I'm a pro basketball player as opposed
Mm,
to I am a person who plays basketball,
right.
because the second that you get cut, there goes your identity, right? The second that
Mm,
we stop doing yoga or Pilates or whatever, it's like, well, I don't want to lose that piece of my identity with because I put so much stock in who I am, so to speak, right? So
yeah.
yeah, there's a lot in that.
And I mean, same thing, like now that I'm still teaching Pilates, but I'm teaching Pilates like at 25% of what I used to teach Pilates at. If I define myself and say I'm a Pilates teacher and then I'm not teaching Pilates, it's like, then who am I?
Yes.
And the reality is more than that for sure, always.
Yep. So how do you answer that question? That's a question I should have prepped you with. Like, who are
Who
you?
are you?
Yes.
Good call. I am a person who cares very deeply about what I do. And I think that's why it's so tough to, have studios closed because I love the people that I work with. Like I'm a really introverted person, but I love um, small doses of people and I love Pilates and I love exploration and movement and all of these things. And um, it does kind of feel, like the rug's been, taken out from under you. And like, obviously, this is the year that just keeps on being this year and just the roller coaster of adventures that I'm sure we'll look back at, like you said, looking back at your journal a year from now, or like even telling your kids and grandkids when they're like, through 2020, and you're going to have like these
Yes.
tales to
Where were you
tell.
when? Yeah, totally.
But in the middle of it, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just giving myself space to, be sad and be
Hmm.
angry at times, and but to use my Pilates practice, my yoga practice as a way to be with those emotions instead of being so busy that you don't have time to feel things because you've got a client in 10 minutes and you've got to be downtown in an hour. It's
Yes.
just like so it's actually really nice to go slow and bake and really check in with my plants, rearrange things, and
Hmm.
set up my grow lights. Like I'm with your friend. You got to give them grow lights in the winter. There's not enough sun.
Yes. I appreciate your passion for that, even though I don't get it.
I mean, same thing with cars. I don't even have a driver's license. So I'm
Oh, you
like, it's
don't?
wonderful. No,
Okay.
I tried. I tried for a decade and I was like, you know what? It's
Wow.
not happening.
No, not your calling. That's fine.
No.
When you said a minute ago about giving space to be sad,
Mm.
are you the type of person who's like always upbeat and happy and smiling where you have to actually like fight to give
Schedule
your
time.
yes, yeah, exactly, right? Because I find like my friends are like that too. Is like it's almost like they're not allowed to show anything other than that smiling face all the time.
I mean, the Inside Out movie was like hit a little too close to home.
Yeah.
That, and I mean, especially in a profession where you're interacting with people, and for a lot of people, you're like the bright spot in their day.
Hmm.
So, of course, you want to, be your brightest self and be the person that cheers people up. But that, again, that can't be the only thing that you are or that you have. So I do have to like schedule time to just like sit, and like meditation really helps, journaling like really helps. Just that like it's a full spectrum experience, whether it's movement or being a human being.
Yeah.
And we, like you said, it's not linear. We would love for it to be linear and it's just
Yeah.
like it's always one step forward, but sometimes it's a step back and sometimes it's
Ten
a
steps back.
downward slope, and sometimes you eat 18 biscotti and it's fine. We
Right.
just
And and for my clients too, the time that I am late, I'm really, my parents are from Jamaica and my dad's always on time. So I can't even pull the like running on West Indian time line. Like I've just grew up on that. But uh, the times that I am late, or the times I am frustrated, the times that I am sad, and my clients see that, they almost revel in my humanity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we're so perfect in their eyes, even if we're trying to say, "Oh, I'm real. I go through these things." When they see us slip up, when they see us have a misstep, they
Mm,
see us go through these things, it almost refreshes them. Okay, well, how is he handling it? Okay, he's real and he handled it. That's how I would handle that. There's a deeper connection because of our
mm.
authenticity.
Yeah, no, I think that it is, it's like it's so tough when it's your job because like you always want to be professional, you know, you don't want to come in and just like complain or just like unload.
Right.
But I find like, especially with like private clients where you do have a little bit more of a personal connection with them, you're not leading sort of like a group adventure where it's
Mhm.
just like here,
Yes.
where you're really connecting with them as an individual person who has an entire life behind the scenes and stuff's going on with their mom or their dog or their partner and all this stuff. Um, yeah, I do think, and like, especially when it's like high stressful situations like this entire year, or,
Yes.
you know, surrounding the election in the US, or surrounding, you know, when there's a tragedy that happens, that those like moments that you, it's almost like it was easier when I was teaching yoga more to be
Yes.
more open and be like, you know what, it's like we're gonna do this and we're gonna do the best we can. We're here, and sometimes that's enough.
Right. Right.
We're
Yeah.
we're
No.
just doing it.
Right. No, I hear you. And that's, well, that comes back to the question about what does professional look like, right? Like, does
Mm,
professional to mean be stoic and then just not have, you know what I mean? Because I've heard that too, and I've actually have
yeah,
taught that from time to time because people really don't care about my story. This is their paying
right.
hour, right? So how do we
Mm-hmm.
get them to a place of moving better, feeling better, being pain free? So I mean, you don't have to know about like what's going on in my personal life.
Right.
But then what's that sweet spot where we actually connect with their people, where they're no longer just a paying client, but they're
Yeah.
acquaintance, moving to a friend, moving to family, where there's a higher level of investment in the whole experience, right? So
Yeah.
it's, I think, once again, it's not linear. It is this really dynamic relationship that we're building with our
Yeah.
clients.
I think of it in terms of legacy that you were just speaking on as well. Like, I don't have children, but I do see every class I teach and every person I interact with as, you know, changing the landscape of Pilates so that the next, you know, the expectation for the Pilates class is different, or that um, that your teacher is a human being and that's okay. Like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
same way, what was I seeing on YouTube? Like Dr. Mike, who's like a YouTube doctor person, and he's one of his big things is like doctors are people too. Like we don't have all the answers and we aren't perfect, and you know, we're all doing the best we can.
Yes.
And I think that applies to your dentist and your Pilates teacher, you know,
Hmm. Yeah,
that
absolutely.
and and also it's so funny that I, even hearing myself talk, see like the restrictions that I'm putting on myself and like being a professional and stuff. You know, I would never hold my client to that. Like if they started crying or if they were upset or spacey or something was going on, I would never be like, well, I guess you're not a good Pilates client, you know?
Right.
Like,
Yes.
of
You just
course you're
step
going
up
to
your
hold
student
space.
game, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right?
yeah.
Like, of course you would hold space for them. You would hold space for a friend or a family member or even a stranger if someone was crying. Like, you
Hmm.
would ask if they were okay. Um, so, way to go putting more things on my to-do list to
There we
allow
go.
myself to be a real person.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen to, if you didn't listen to my conversation with Tasha Edwards, we talked about holding space
Mm,
and being able to just show up.
hmm.
And the dialogue is so complicated because there's times like, you know, with all this racial awakening that's happening, there's times where something would happen on a Wednesday night and I had to show up Thursday morning,
Mm,
game face on, and just still be able to be there for people. And
right.
there is a strength in just showing up anyways to say,
Mm,
this is how we show resilience and this is how we persevere.
right.
Um, Instead of just coming in and, you know, as she said, like just calling in black today because I just don't want to be there. Um,
Mm,
there's this, it really is a very dynamic thing. So I like the fact that we can give space for all these things, because there will be times when you need to just, game face on, smile, and show
Right.
up and just be there for someone because they need your energy.
Right.
And there's times when we can be totally transparent and allow us be vulnerable enough that they give us a space to be,
Mm. Yeah.
so
I mean, that sounds ideal, honestly.
yes.
That just like a more compassionate interaction, that it's, and this is something I talk about in my podcast, and I know that you talk about all the time on your show, is that, we teach Pilates, but it's not just Pilates. Like, we are people being with other people, uh, and like using the language of Pilates to really explore movement and explore our humanity, just like being a better human.
Yes, I love that. I've said this way, Pilates is our currency. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's our language. It's just what we happen to be using. And, I had a mentor who said to me once, you're not a personal trainer, you are a business person, and your product happens to be fitness.
Mm.
And I think it's the same for this interaction. It's like, you're not a Pilates instructor or a yoga instructor. You're just a human being, and our language just happens to be Pilates right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what if you decide? What if your plants become your ticket
They
to
go viral.
wealth? Yes, exactly. Your wealth and your fame and fortune all comes off your plants, and you just drop the Pilates thing, and then you're the plant lady. You're still going to use that to connect with people,
For
right? You're going
sure.
to use every skill set to just authentically bring the best out of people through their plants. It's
Yeah.
going to be your language at that time.
Yeah. I love that, because you can be bilingual, you can be multilingual. Like,
Yes.
what a beautiful world to live in, that you can. And I mean, the same way when you meet someone for the first time and you find like common ground, like this is the first time that I'm talking to you face to face ish.
Hmm.
And it's like, all right, well, what can we talk about? Well, we're both human beings. Let's start there.
Let's
Like,
start there.
and
Yeah.
like we do Pilates, and that's awesome.
Absolutely. And I love what you're doing with your podcast. And instead of just saying like what your podcast is and what it does, what was your vision behind doing that? Because there are almost as many people on the planet as there are podcasts out there.
Not quite. I would say blogs,
Almost.
maybe.
Yes.
So the podcast really came out of, as a new-ish Pilates teacher, I had a lot of questions. I felt like I was learning so much, and like I had bosses and I had like the people who taught me Pilates, but I didn't have people who weren't like already at the studio I was working with, where I could like ask questions, and not like what's the best way to cue short spine,
Mhm.
but questions like how many hours a day should I teach, or is this a good studio to work at, or
Yes.
um, how do I transition from one studio to another studio? How do I fire a client? Like, these kind of questions that come with teaching Pilates, but aren't just the 100 is the
Yeah.
first
Like the
exercise, and
hard
then this
Pilates
is the next
questions.
one. Right. It's not
Yes.
just like the choreography. And there's lots of amazing teachers who teach wonderful choreography who I borrow from endlessly on Instagram and on YouTube. But as far as someone that I could, like, I wanted to be someone that people could ask that question. Like, I just had someone who listens to the podcast message me on Instagram and be like, do you think I can have a dog and also teach Pilates? Like, is
Mm.
that possible? And
Yes.
like, who are you going to ask that? So
Right. Yes.
I wanted it to be a resource. I wanted it to be a place where people could, for Pilates teachers, especially like new Pilates teachers, to kind of, do I take the national exam? Like, it was like
Yeah.
barely
Great
even referenced
questions.
in my teacher training, or like when I read Caged Lion and then talked about it, like, what does Joe as a teacher mean for you teaching Pilates? Things like that. So that's really where Teacher's Manual came from. And then Student's Manual came from the first round of lockdown, when I had a lot of time. And I was like, the I have like students have questions about Pilates too. And I know that when I first started doing things, I didn't want to go up to the teacher and be like, so how's that supposed to feel? Or you don't want to disrupt the class or anything. So I wanted to also talk about Pilates from a student perspective, and also know that they're taking classes, and hopefully give them some tips that they could take to their class. And maybe if I know what my pelvis looks like when the teacher talks about like being on my sacrum, then I'll have like a better idea of where my sacrum is and like how this feels. So
Yes.
that was kind of where students came from too.
That's amazing. That is a gap. That really is a gap.
I thought so. And now I'm so excited that that so many Pilates podcasts are happening. Like I feel like when I started it, there were only a couple, and now Core Conversations is amazing. It's even broader. Nikki Nab-Levy just restarted
Yes.
her podcast with Results Not Typical, which I'm so excited to dive into.
Hmm.
There's Breathe Education out of Australia has an incredible podcast called Pilates Elephants, and they are the coolest.
Yeah.
So it's just like really amazing things. And again, worldwide, like talking to you in
Yes.
Canada, which is like low key blowing my mind because time change does that for me. And like
It's like an
Australia
hour.
and like California, I know, but it's like an hour in the future. So pretty cool. It's like living in
Too
the future
funny.
constantly.
Yes, exactly. It's not too exciting, and it's snow too. Just for the record, we're on the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is so true, and I love the fact that we can celebrate that. And it's not this competition too, right?
Yes.
Um, I've been talking a lot about people's superpowers, like their
Hmm.
secret powers, because in the fitness world, we have our personal trainers and we have people who do like squats and deadlifts and people who
Hmm.
focus on competition and blah, blah, blah. And then we specialize with Pilates, right? Like Pilates
Hmm.
becomes this little niche market. And then within that niche market, you have someone like me who is just passionate about introducing men to Pilates, or someone
Yes.
who is really passionate about, this the minutia of the exercise, or someone who's huge on ethics and cueing or whatever, or
Mm.
marketing. So I just love celebrating that. Like it's no real
Yeah.
competition when everyone, if you boil it down, has their little corner of the market, and they don't do the stuff
Yeah.
that I do, and I don't do the stuff that they do as well as they do, right? So
Right. I think that they complement each other, that,
absolutely.
I I mean, you could ask me a business question, but like I don't know, like I'm not the best business person, like but I might send you over to Leslie Logan, whose
Mhm.
entire thing is, helping Pilates businesses and Pilates studios, like
Yes.
everyone has something that even within Pilates that we love, that we love even more,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think there's crossover too, that it's not like, well, I only want to learn about teaching Pilates. Like, no, I also want to hear from incredible Pilates teachers and fitness world leaders,
Hmm.
what's going on in their life and in their business.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
think,
Yeah, I'm trying to broaden the conversation with my guests, but there's so many people in this Pilates world that that we don't know about, right? Like I've had
hmm
people from Germany and Australia and South America. It's like it's so cool. And we focus so much on those well-known superheroes. Like we know about
hmm
Iron Man, but we don't know about the Bronze Tiger, right? Like
right.
these people that are just doing awesome stuff and just changing the world in Switzerland. And we're like, oh, that's so
hmm
cool. I didn't so yeah,
Yes.
it's awesome to see. So I'm grateful for having people like you on too. Like your podcasts are
Yeah.
so cool, and
Thank you.
I love the fact that you're filling those gaps, like, and asking those questions that people, probably have but are afraid to ask or don't know where to ask it.
For sure. No, it's great. And I think it's also, especially now, like loving I mean, I don't know how you do this 5 days a week, Martin. You're amazing. Like your superpower is
Listening.
being amazing. Yeah. Well, no, listening and just like having a place for people to interact, because especially in lockdown, it can be really isolating.
Mhm.
And I know that, when I first started as a Pilates teacher as well, there's no other teachers there while you're teaching. You go in and it's
Yes.
your studio for 4 hours or for 3 hours or for how many classes you're teaching. And you won't, like, it's just you and you're like really alone. So, like, even not in lockdown, it can be isolating to just, and
Right.
it's you and your clients, and you're like, well, am I doing the right thing? Like, I really wish I had people I could bounce ideas off of. So,
Hmm.
anything, whether it's a podcast or a fitness show or your favorite teacher on YouTube, anything that builds community and really gives people a space to just engage with each other and not feel alone.
It's so sad. It makes it
I know.
sound
I mean, that's well. I mean, it's. I know it's tough in lockdown. Like, I'm lucky that I live with my partner. But for people who are living alone and like Pilates is their outlet, or that's their social thing. Like,
Mhm.
so I think that things like this, conversations like this, are so important because it's on live. Like, I see people commenting, like you're getting involved.
Yes.
Um, you're feeling like you're part of something, and it's like you don't have like a Pilates island. It's a Pilates Pangea, and like
Yes.
um, we can really interact with each other, and we can
Mhm.
talk to each other, and do Pilates together. I love that you're like lifting people up. Like, what classes are you guys teaching? Like, let's go hang out.
Yeah, exactly. And there's Kathy. Hi, Kathy. And Blossom just jumped in as well. There's a comment here. For student perspective, the podcast is so reassuring and essential.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it is really, really good. There's another comment earlier. Oh, yeah, so I mentioned about Pilates is our currency.
Hmm.
Pilates or yoga, whatever it is to connect with others. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Um, there's a safety too that comes with that. Like you were saying about, people asking questions about, their like, can it teach with the dog? Like, I love the fact that you're giving space for those different questions.
Hmm.
And one of the things we were talking about, or I think maybe I was reading about, was you're saying there's things that aren't taught in our teacher trainings that you want to
Mm.
address.
Yeah.
So, and for those of you watching too, put in the comment section, what are some of the things that you wished that they had taught you in your teacher training?
It's like there aren't enough hours. Like, I'm in no way like faulting anyone's teacher training program. It's
Yes,
just like there's barely enough hours to like learn the exercises and like
yes.
what's going on in them and how to do them and how to say them. Like, I was really lucky that um, I was, a yoga teacher first, and then I taught kindergarten, and then I was a theater person. So I'm totally comfortable talking through things. But
Yes.
for a lot of people, the biggest barrier is like, well, what do I say? Or like, I
Hmm.
know the exercise, but like, how do I tell someone who doesn't know the exercise? How do I tell someone who's never been on a reformer before how to get on the reformer?
Yes.
Um, and I mean, there's just there's so much to cover.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
and I
Oh,
feel like the teacher training programs kind of focus on that, which is important because if someone shows up to your class, you should probably have some exercises to tell them.
yes.
Uh, but at the same time, you know, I see integrated teaching systems on. Hi, Chelsea.
Yes.
Like, what is the best way to teach an exercise in a way that they're gonna like retain it?
Hmm.
Or what is, I'm also doing like a trauma informed Pilates approach, like
Yes.
working with that. I did a webinar just with Sonia, Commando Fitness Collective,
Yes.
talking
Herbert.
about, how do you work with a Black body was one of the things, in addition to learning about Kathy Grant and kind of the hidden figures and
Yes.
Black leaders in the Pilates industry who've been erased largely. And so all of these things also coming into you
Hmm.
teaching Pilates, that it's not just the exercise, that like that's the currency, but like how you carry yourself, what your website is, like is your
Yes.
studio welcoming to all people, all bodies, all ages, all abilities?
Hmm.
Um, are your teachers comfortable teaching all of those people as well?
Right.
Um, and that's big, and that's why continuing education is so important.
That's
I think too.
exactly what I was going to get to, because I mean, it would be impossible to get all that into a teacher training program unless it was like a 6-year teacher training
Yeah,
program.
lifetime
Right.
apprenticeship.
Exactly. And really, but that's really it, right? Like, I mean, when I when I completed my last course, I feel like I graduated. It's like you're told, well, this is your driver's license, and now you are allowed to safely operate a vehicle.
Right,
That's a far cry from saying you are now allowed to race Lewis Hamilton in
right,
Formula One. Like, I mean, you may never get to that point, but you
right.
are now allowed to safely operate a vehicle. I think
Mm,
that our teacher training is that, and we need to shift our
mm-hmm,
mindset to say we have arrived when we hit our teacher training, to say like
mm,
we have actually just started when we got to teacher training under our
yes,
belt,
yeah,
right? Because all the different people in the room, the things that you just mentioned that were perfect for your continuing education might be different than the things that I want to do for my continuing education. So
100%.
so why would I put it on Blossom's teacher training to be able to hit both of our,
Hmm.
whatever, right? Like you just can't do that.
Definitely.
And when I was teaching, I used to teach like a personal trainer onboarding course for a big box gym, and that was my regional education specialist. That was my role. Uh, One of the lines I've always said is that there's a lot more things that are caught than taught, right? So I would teach from the
That's nice.
manual, right? I would teach something on the PowerPoint, whatever it is, and then we get on this side tangent about teaching my kids how to fall while they're
Mm,
my younger son was crazy and he would do like backflips off the couch onto pillows, and then I take the pillows away and then he landed on, and now he could do like flips back, and he's taught himself. So that would
that's
be like
awesome.
this, it'd be like this random conversation, but then my students would be like, oh, okay, so there's different ways that people learn. Maybe we need to think about,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? So you start to have these conversations that aren't actually in the manual, but people learn anyways.
Yes.
And it just points to the fact that there's always this continuing education, and there's always a quest for knowledge that we should be giving the teacher training so that they can start to ask harder questions of their
Yeah,
program.
definitely. Completely agree. Like
And
there's,
yeah,
and I love that you can continue to like follow what you love. Beyond that, like if you're a total anatomy nerd and that's just your game,
yes,
great. Like do that, specialize in that. For people I know who are like prenatal, postpartum Pilates, like yes, like do that. Like there's so much that you can continue to explore, and we should explore because like you said, you might something might connect with someone. Like teaching your kid how to fall may not connect with me, but it might connect with someone who's like, oh yeah, I also have a kid who's like jumping off counters and stuff, like
yeah,
okay, yeah, like so you want to like have, and I think that also speaks to having multiple passions. Like you want to be able
yes,
to share things. So like a lot of the unilateral balance work that we do in Pilates, we can think of it as like, oh, so important. We're strengthening our lateral line. We're, building our proprioception. We're like feeling our body in space. Yes.
yes,
And if you
yes,
like skateboarding like I do, you're going to need to stand on one leg while you kick,
yes.
or while you snowboard or while you do anything, or ice skate. Or there's like lots of ways to apply Pilates to our clients and to our lives, like
Yeah,
beyond the studio.
absolutely. So what's next? We were talking offline about your podcast one,
Hmm.
and you're also mentioning like having to make some pivots with the studios being closed now.
Yep.
So what's next with all of the different things that you're juggling right now for you?
What is next? Well, probably I'm going to eat breakfast after this. No. um,
Like
I
20 minutes after that. Like,
Yeah,
how's that?
right. I'm looking at taking Pilates teacher's manual and turning it into a book for
Okay,
sure.
cool.
That's kind of like a companion manual to everything from like choosing your teacher training program, because like I was a person who was like, should I shop around? I was
Right.
like, this one's right here, and I just like did it because it was a studio I was already at.
Yeah.
Um, and so kind of going everything from like choosing your teacher training program to like kind of the things about leading classes that you may not know, like things for me, a lot of it comes from like stage presence and this like idea of
Nice.
like having a persona. And um, for someone who's done it since high school, like for me, it's really easy to like snap in and like turn on. And I'm like, I'm on right now, like,
Yes.
but for someone who doesn't have that experience, like how can we do that? So kind of turning that into a book, um, looking at my like whole life, like that was like the big project that I was on. I'm looking at buying a condo. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I love Chicago. I definitely want to stay in Chicago, I think, for the near and possibly not near future. Um, I want to keep making time to do Pilates and learn Pilates and do yoga and learn yoga
Mhm.
as much as teaching it, because I love teaching. But the reason I love teaching is because I love what I'm doing. And
Yes.
just staying connected to that. That's not long term, but it's also very long term. That's like every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I
This,
don't know. What about you? Tell me more about what's happening in your life for the next foreseeable forever.
I know, right? Well, I'm sitting in one of my COVID babies, the studio behind me.
It's beautiful. I'm
Thank
jealous,
you.
very.
And all 200 square feet of it, there's one wall, and
That's
there's the other.
beautiful.
And yeah, so between that and the podcast, like those are the two things that I'm really running with right now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, if someone was to say like, who's your favorite child? You can't really say, well,
Right.
I really like my second child better than my first child. Like
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have to just choose to just love all of them, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, these are the two things that I'm focusing on right now. Like, how do I build this studio slash broadcast center? Because obviously I can't have people in here. So we got to be strategic with online presence and trying to build that
Mm-hmm.
up. And then also this, these core conversations in this podcast between you and I and everyone who's watching. I feel like usually when it comes to projects that I'm on, I'm more comfortable coming alongside someone else in their project
Mm,
than asking for help on my project.
for sure.
You know what I mean? Like maybe it's just because I don't want to see my own project fail, or I
Mm.
just like, being the important person helping somebody else, whatever. Like we could dive deep on that if you want, but I have counseling background. So if you want to examine that, I'm totally comfortable with that. But the fact that this is about amplifying other voices like yours,
Mm,
that's the thing that gives me the push to say, I need help with this. Please share this with your friends. Let's get as many people listening to this as possible. I want this to be like the voice for our community. So it's because it's all about other people, I feel like that gives me the push to ask more people to support it and to push for it.
yeah.
So yeah, so as much as I'm making $0 per hour doing these podcasts at this point,
Yet. Yet.
yet, right? It really is a passion project, which I think is going to continue to just get bigger and bigger and bigger because we're
Hmm.
celebrating one another and it's not a competition. We're just growing together. So
I like to see it as like laying the foundation. Like, of course, when you just get started, like it's not immediately an income source, but I think that what
right,
you're doing is so valuable and so needed in our community that it's a space to just talk about anything, everything, the vast things that compose us as teachers, as people, as families. And I think that like the work that you're doing is amazing, and I feel like you should also like launch a Patreon or a Buy Me a Coffee page or something because
yeah, I saw your
you
Buy Me a
really,
Coffee page. Yeah,
yes,
that's
it's like
slick.
it's cool and it's like a good thing because then you know obvious like I'm like saying this, I'm also on your show, but like also like what you're doing is really important, and I do think that people would support you if you just said, hey, would you be interested in supporting this? Like, I think that you should
Yeah.
because I launched the Buy Me a Coffee page just a couple months ago. Like I had 2 seasons, about 40 episodes of Teacher's Manual kind of under my belt, and then I launched Student's Manual. And, like I also like it because it's another way that people can connect with you. And we're talking about like this importance of connection
Yes.
and that like because you see how many downloads your episode has, but like you don't know who those people are necessarily, and this
Right.
gives you a chance to like it's like, hey, I'm Kate from Australia and I loved your episode about the ab series or whatever, and then you're like, oh my gosh, thanks, Kate, and it just like
Yes.
continues. Like I hope that you feel good about what you're doing as well, but it's
Yeah.
like such a great way to like also hear like the positive impact that you're making. I'm sure that everyone who is on your show is saying this, but like you're making a great positive impact in
Well, thank you.
the community worldwide. Like I'm in Chicago, you
Yeah.
are in Canada,
Yes.
and we're still able to connect.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
freaking amazing.
I know, right? It is. It really is. Yeah, so I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now. Thanks.
Good.
Thanks.
Excellent. As you should, forever.
Right. And there's my friend Ahmed, who is where is he again? He's in Switzerland? He just popped on.
What time is it in Switzerland?
No, where is he? I mean, where are you? Put in the comment section. But yeah, it's,
Time change.
yeah, I'm not sure, but we are at 50 minutes. That
Oh
just
my gosh.
flew
That
through.
flew by. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. So I'd love to be on your podcast as well, and we could just
Yes. Oh my
do
gosh.
part two on the
Yes.
teacher trainers side.
Mm-hmm.
Switzerland, that's
Definitely.
right. Yes.
Switzerland. Yay. Welcome. What time
Hmm.
is it? I guess it's like nighttime.
Yeah, I
There's
believe it's
7
nighttime.
ahead, 8 ahead.
I think so.
Time travel is now.
Yes.
That's how I felt like when I lived in
5
South
p.m.
Korea for a few years, and it's like when you go there, you lose a day, and when you come back, you live the same day twice.
Yes.
That's time travel.
That's pretty fascinating.
Hmm.
There you go. Well, thank you for your time today. This has been so
Yeah.
good. Really, really
Thank you.
enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Martin. You are incredible. Keep doing that amazing stuff.
Thank you. And I will message you afterwards and we'll set a date for the podcast and we'll do
Yay.
chapter 2 over there.
Yes, fantastic.
Awesome. Okay, I'm signing off. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye.